When I installed those security cameras in our apartment, I thought I was simply protecting our assets. I never imagined they would capture the words that would completely destroy everything I believed about my marriage. My wife, Jennifer, was sitting on the living room couch, chatting casually with her best friend, Sarah, and it was then that I heard that phrase that froze my blood. "He has no idea I have another man." 5 simple words that exploded like a nuclear bomb over the 12 years we'd built together. But what she didn't know was that every word, every laugh, every sordid detail of the conversation was being recorded in high definition on the clouds of the security system I'd installed myself 2 weeks earlier. And when I finally watched those images, sitting alone in my office at 3 in the morning, my entire life crumbled and rebuilt itself simultaneously. What happened after that discovery changed not only my marriage, but the lives of everyone involved in ways no one could have predicted. If you're listening to this story right now, maybe it's because you've been through something similar, or maybe you're just looking to understand how complex and surprising human relationships can be. Either way, you've come to the right place. This channel is a safe space where real stories like mine are shared without filters or judgment. Here you'll find stories that will move you, make you reflect, and perhaps even help you see your own experiences differently. Because we all have our stories, don't we? And sharing these experiences makes us realize we're not alone. Subscribe to the channel now and be part of this community where every story matters and where you're always welcome. Together, we transform difficult moments into life lessons and personal growth. Now, let me tell you from the beginning how it all happened and how this discovery completely changed the course of my life. My name is Michael Thompson, and for 12 years, I believed I was happily married. Jennifer and I met in college, at that time when everything seemed magical and full of possibilities. She was studying marketing, and I was studying civil engineering. We graduated together, built our careers side by side, and married in a beautiful ceremony in June 2013, surrounded by friends and family. Today, I'm 38, and she's 36. We've built a life many would consider enviable. We lived in a spacious apartment in Chicago, on the 12th floor of a modern building overlooking the lake. I worked as a senior engineer at a respected firm, earning about $180,000 a year, while Jennifer managed marketing for a technology company, earning approximately $95,000. Together, we had a comfortable income that allowed us to live well, travel occasionally, and save for the future. The decision to install security cameras came after a series of burglaries in our building. In March 2024, 3 apartments were broken into while residents were at work. The condominium management beefed up security at the entrance, but many residents decided to install their own monitoring systems. I researched extensively and chose a modern system that included 4 cameras with 4K resolution, night vision, motion detection, and 30-day cloud storage. I spent about $1,200 on the equipment and professional installation. I placed cameras at the main entrance, in the hallway leading to the bedrooms, a discreet one in the living room, and another on the balcony. Jennifer knew about the cameras, of course. We discussed it, and she agreed it was a necessary measure. I set up the system so we both had access via the app on our phones, allowing us to view live footage from anywhere. What neither of us discussed in detail was how the system also recorded ambient audio with impressive clarity. The first few weeks were normal. I'd check the cameras occasionally when I was at work, more out of technological curiosity than any suspicion. I'd see Jennifer coming home, our cat Lucy wandering through the rooms, the cleaning lady coming twice a week. Nothing out of the ordinary. My professional life was demanding at the time. We were finishing a major construction project for a commercial complex, and I spent long hours at the office and on the construction site. I'd leave home around 7 a.m. and often not return until after 8 p.m. Jennifer had a more flexible schedule, often working from home 2 or 3 times a week. Our marriage had entered that comfortable phase many long-term couples experience. We didn't fight much, but the initial passion had also given way to a predictable routine. Quick dinners, superficial conversations about the day, weekends divided between household chores and occasional get-togethers with friends. Looking back, I realized there were signs I chose to ignore. Jennifer started dressing up more, buying new clothes frequently. She started going to the gym 4 times a week, something she'd never done with such discipline before. Her cell phone, once casually left on the table, was now always with her, even when she went to the bathroom. When I asked about work, her answers were vague and quick. There was a different light in her eyes, a kind of excitement I hadn't seen in years when she was with me. But I was too busy, too tired, too confident to connect the dots. After all, we'd been married for over a decade. We'd built a life together. Trust was the foundation of everything, or at least that's what I believed. The discovery happened on Tuesday, April 23, 2024, a date that has remained etched in my memory as a turning point in my life. That day, I had an important presentation at work at 9 in the morning. I woke up early, had a quick breakfast, and left the house around 6:30. Jennifer was still asleep, or so it seemed. The presentation went well, and soon after, I went straight to the construction site to resolve some issues with the suppliers. Around 2 in the afternoon, during a break, I decided to check the apartment's cameras through the app. I'm not sure exactly why I did it at that particular moment. Maybe it was intuition, maybe just boredom during the break. I opened the app expecting to see live footage of the empty apartment, since Jennifer had told me that morning that she would have off-site meetings all day. But the apartment wasn't empty. Jennifer was sitting on the living room couch with Sarah Mitchell, her best friend since college. They were drinking what looked like white wine, despite it being mid-afternoon on a weekday. This struck me as odd, but not alarming. Maybe they were celebrating something at work. I turned up the volume on my phone to listen to the conversation, more out of curiosity than suspicion. The first few sentences were trivial, gossip about mutual acquaintances, complaints about work. Then Sarah said something that caught my attention. "So, how's that business of yours going?" Her voice had a conspiratorial, almost amused tone. Jennifer laughed, one of those intimate laughs between friends sharing secrets. "It's great. Better than I imagined." And then came the sentence that destroyed everything. "He has no idea I have someone else." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. My hand began to tremble as I held the phone. I had to sit down on a pile of construction materials because my legs simply gave out. I turned up the volume even higher, pressing the phone to my ear, needing to make sure I'd understood correctly. Sarah responded enthusiastically. "Girl, you're living dangerously. Aren't you afraid of being discovered?" Jennifer took another sip of wine and responded with a confidence that cut through me like a knife. "Michael is so predictable. He leaves early, comes back late, and is always focused on work. He hasn't paid me any attention in months. Honestly, I don't think he'd even notice if I disappeared for a whole week." The words kept flowing from that video, each sentence a new stab. Sarah asked how long this had been going on. Jennifer thought for a moment. "About 4 months, maybe 5. It started slowly, just conversations, you know how it is. But in the last few weeks it's gotten more intense. I feel alive again, Sarah. I feel wanted, special. With Michael, everything has become routine, obligatory. I can't remember the last time he really looked at me, planned something special, showed he still cared." My heart was racing, pounding so hard I could hear it in my own ears. 4 or 5 months. That meant it started around December or January. I tried to remember that time. What was happening? Where were the signs I'd completely missed? Sarah asked the question I was desperate to know the answer to. "And who is he?" "Someone I know." Jennifer shook her head. "Not directly. It's Derek, that sales manager at the company. Remember I mentioned him a few times? Tall, handsome, always very attentive. We started working together on a project late last year. He's single, 32, and doesn't yet have all the responsibilities and weight Michael carries. He's fun, spontaneous. He texts me throughout the day, makes me feel special." Derek. The name echoed in my mind. She'd mentioned it a few times casually, but I'd never paid attention. Just another coworker, I thought. How could I have been so blind? The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, each second revealing new, painful details. Jennifer explained that they met during lunch at a discreet hotel near her office. That he took her to romantic dinners at restaurants I'd never taken her to. That they planned a weekend together at a resort the following month, using a work conference as an excuse. She described intimate moments with an excitement she hadn't shown with me in years. Sarah, to my further shock, wasn't judging or trying to dissuade her friend. On the contrary, she was encouraging, laughing, and asking for more details as if it were all an exciting adventure without consequences. Then Jennifer said something that turned my pain into something more complex. The worst part is that sometimes I feel guilty, you know. Michael isn't a bad man. He works hard, provides well for us, and is responsible. But that's it. There's no passion, no surprise, no spark. He's become a roommate who pays half the bills. And honestly, with my salary and my development at the company, I don't even need him financially anymore. I'm seriously considering filing for divorce, but I want to wait for the right time. Maybe after he finishes this big project at work, to get a better deal. My lawyer is already looking into the situation. She had a lawyer. She was planning a divorce. And I knew absolutely nothing. It was like discovering you were living in a completely different reality than you thought. Sarah agreed it was smart to plan carefully before acting. They discussed strategies for dividing assets, about the apartment we were paying for together. Jennifer mentioned that she had started transferring part of her salary to a separate account I didn't know about, preparing for her financial independence. Everything was being meticulously planned while I lived in complete ignorance, believing we were building a future together. When the video finally ended with the two friends saying goodbye and Jennifer saying she needed to get back to work, I sat there in shock for almost an hour. My colleagues passed by, some asked if I was okay, and I just nodded, unable to form words. My mind was processing everything at breakneck speed. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of trust, of plans, of believing we were a team. And it was all a lie, or at least it had become one in the last few months without me realizing it. My first reaction was pure rage. I wanted to go straight home, confront her, yell, throw her out of the apartment. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the engineer in me, accustomed to planning every step of a complex project. Maybe it was self-preservation telling me not to act impulsively. I took several deep breaths, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions. She had a lawyer and was planning. I needed to plan too. I needed proof, I needed to fully understand the situation before making any move. I returned to the office and asked to leave early, citing a medical emergency. I went straight to a cafe far from my neighborhood, opened my laptop, and got to work. First, I downloaded all the camera footage from the last 30 days that the system had stored. Hours of footage were transferred to an external hard drive and 3 different cloud services. I couldn't risk losing this evidence. Then I began reviewing the most recent recordings, looking for other compromising moments or revealing conversations. I found several. Jennifer on the phone with Derek, laughing and flirting in ways that made me feel physically ill. Moments of her getting especially well-groomed before leaving, checking her appearance in the mirror with a smile I hadn't seen in months when she was with me. Next, I looked for a divorce lawyer. I researched online, read reviews, and scheduled an urgent appointment for the next day. Then, something I never thought I'd do but now seemed necessary, I checked our joint bank accounts. Jennifer was right about having started separating money. In the last 3 months, she had transferred about $15,000 from the joint account to an account I didn't know about. Small amounts here and there that I never noticed because I wasn't used to micromanaging our finances. I trusted her completely. Once again, trust had proven to be my greatest weakness. That night, when I finally returned home around 9 o'clock, Jennifer was in the kitchen preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. She smiled when she saw me, a casual, carefree smile. Hey, love, tough day. You look tired. Her voice was sweet, even caring. How did she do it? How could she look me in the eyes, call me, love, act like the devoted wife when just hours ago she'd been sitting on our couch describing in detail her betrayal to her friend? I forced a smile, said yes, it had been a tough day. I need to take a shower. I locked myself in the bathroom and for the first time in years, since my father's death, I cried. I cried for the loss of innocence, for the broken trust, for the end of a marriage I still loved even after discovering she hadn't for months. Over the next few days, I maintained a facade of normalcy while meticulously crafting my plan. I consulted with my attorney, Thomas Richardson, a 55-year-old with 30 years of experience handling complex divorce cases. I showed him the surveillance footage. He watched it with a professional expression, taking notes. When he finished, he got straight to the point. Michael, you have solid evidence of infidelity. In Illinois, although we are a no-fault divorce state, this evidence can still influence property division and other matters. The fact that she is planning the divorce and hiding money also works in her favor. We need to act strategically. We spent 2 hours discussing strategies. He explained my rights, the possibilities, the most likely scenarios. He advised me to start documenting everything, her spending, suspicious behavior, any additional evidence of bad faith. He suggested I also set aside some of my own money to protect myself, since she was doing the same. With each piece of his guidance, I felt further away from the person I was a week ago. I was becoming calculating, defensive, someone who needed to protect their interests because the person I trusted most in the world was plotting to harm me. During this period, continuing to live with Jennifer was torturous. Every interaction was a play. She acted normally, perhaps even more affectionate than usual, possibly feeling guilty or trying to keep up appearances. She cooked dinner, asked about my day, even initiated sex a few times, something that had become rare in recent months. And I had to respond, I had to maintain normalcy, because revealing that I knew everything would be giving away my strategic advantage. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, lying in the same bed with someone knowing about the betrayal, accepting caresses knowing those same hands were touching another man, hearing words of affection knowing they were empty. I used this time to gather more evidence. I checked the phone records of our joint account and found hundreds of messages and calls to a number that, after further research, I confirmed belonged to Derek Patterson, a 32-year-old sales manager at the company where Jennifer worked. I hired a private investigator, something I'd only seen in movies but now became necessary in my reality. He confirmed the hotel encounters during lunch hours and photographed Jennifer and Derek coming and going together, always cautious but not careful enough to avoid an experienced professional. The detective, a gentleman named Robert Chen, gave me a detailed report after 2 weeks of investigation. Jennifer and Derek met an average of 3 times a week at the Riverside Hotel, always during lunchtime, staying for approximately 2 hours. They dined together on 4 occasions at restaurants outside the city. Derek had made a reservation for a weekend at a resort in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, for the end of May, less than a month before that date. Everything Jennifer had told Sarah was true, now documented in photographs, hotel records, and restaurant reservations. Meanwhile, I continued reviewing the camera footage. I found more revealing conversations, not just with Sarah but also phone calls with Derek that occurred when she thought she was alone. I heard her say, "I love you," to another man in my own apartment. I heard her complain about me, calling me boring, predictable, emotionally absent. Some of the criticism was fair and hurt in a different way. Maybe I had really become too comfortable. Maybe I had let work consume all my energy, neglecting my marriage. But did that justify cheating? Did it justify lies, secretly planning a divorce, stealing money from the joint account? 3 weeks after the initial discovery, my lawyer told me we had more than enough evidence and it was time to act. We scheduled everything for Friday, May 17, 2024. The plan was to confront her with all the evidence, have the divorce papers ready, and have already arranged an immediate physical separation. Thomas advised me to do this with him present, in a neutral setting, to avoid uncontrolled emotional confrontations and ensure everything was properly documented. That Friday morning, I woke with my heart racing. Jennifer was sleeping beside me, peaceful and oblivious to what was to come. I watched her face for a moment, trying to find the woman I'd fallen in love with in college over 15 years ago. Was she still there somewhere, beneath the masks and lies? Or had that person never really existed? I got up silently, got ready, and left a note in the kitchen saying I'd be leaving early for work. She wouldn't even understand anything different, since this was my usual routine. I spent the day at the office, trying to focus on work but constantly checking the clock. Thomas and I had arranged to meet Jennifer at his office at 6 o'clock, using as an excuse a meeting about updating the will that I insisted we had to do. She initially thought it was strange but agreed, probably thinking it would be something quick and bureaucratic. At 5:30, I was in Thomas's office reviewing everything one last time. The camera footage on a tablet. The detective's photographs printed. The phone records highlighted. The divorce papers ready. A separation agreement already drawn up protecting my interests. Jennifer arrived sharp at 6, punctual as always. She entered the conference room smiling, dressed elegantly after her day's work. She greeted Thomas politely, still not understanding what was happening. She sat down next to me and took my hand, a gesture that would have been affectionate in any other context but now made me feel nauseous. Then Thomas began. "Jennifer, thank you for coming. Actually, this meeting isn't about the will. Michael has some important matters to discuss with you regarding your marriage." I saw confusion on her face, then a slight worry. She looked at me with those green eyes that once kept me awake at night, now reflecting only guilt disguised as confusion. "Michael, what is this about?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jennifer, I know about Derek. I know everything." I saw the color drain from her face instantly. Her hand released mine as if it had been burned. "What are you talking about?" Her voice was weak, already knowing the lie wouldn't work but still trying. Thomas pushed the tablet across the table, the video of her and Sarah on the couch already paused at the exact moment she said the fatal line. "I showed this to my client 3 weeks ago. Since then, we've documented everything." I pressed play. We watched about 5 minutes of that conversation together. Jennifer went pale, then red, her hands shaking visibly. When I paused the video, she tried to speak. "Michael, I can explain, it's not what it seems." But her voice lacked conviction. I knew there was no possible explanation for what we had just seen. I wasn't finished. I laid the detective's photographs on the table, one by one. Jennifer and Derek entering the hotel. Leaving hand in hand. Dining intimately in romantic restaurants. The resort reservation for the weekend. Each image was another layer of undeniable reality. Then the phone records, hundreds of calls and messages. And finally, the bank statements showing the transfers to the secret account. You were planning it all, weren't you? The divorce, hiding money, securing your exit. While I was working to build our future, you were destroying our present and planning your future without me. Tears began to stream down her face, but I didn't feel the sympathy I normally would. They were the tears of someone caught, not of someone genuinely sorry. "Michael, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to be this way. Things between us have been hard for so long, and Derek came along and made me feel things I hadn't felt in years, and I lost myself." I held up my hand, stopping the flow of apologies. "I don't want to hear about your feelings or your excuses right now. You had months to tell me you were unhappy, that you wanted repairs, or that you wanted out. You chose to lie, cheat, and scheme behind my back." Thomas took control of the conversation, professional and direct. "Jennifer, due to the nature of this situation and the substantial evidence of bad faith, my client is initiating divorce proceedings. Here are the papers. We have specific proposals on property division that take into account the circumstances. He pushed the documents toward her. I slid a second set of papers. And this is a separation order, effective immediately. You have until Sunday to collect your essentials from the apartment. The rest can be coordinated later with proper supervision. Jennifer stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. Are you kicking me out of my own home? Her voice was now filled with indignation, mixed with desperation. Our apartment, I corrected. And temporarily, yes. You violated the fundamental trust of our marriage and were actively hiding marital assets. I will not continue living under the same roof with someone who was plotting to harm me. Thomas added that everything was legal and that she should consult her own lawyer, the one she had already hired to plan the divorce, to review the terms. The meeting lasted another 2 hours, alternating between Jennifer trying to explain herself, then getting angry, then begging for a chance, then accepting reality. Thomas kept everything on track, ensuring every legal point was covered, every document signed where necessary. When we finally finished, it was already past 8 o'clock. Jennifer walked out of that office devastated, crying, clutching the divorce papers like they were a death sentence. Part of me, a small part, felt sorry. But the larger part, the part that had been betrayed and deceived for months, felt only a deep emptiness and a cold determination to move on. That weekend, Jennifer packed up her things from the apartment. I stayed at a hotel to avoid unnecessary confrontation. My brother David and 2 close friends went there to supervise and ensure she only took what was hers. According to David, she cried the entire time, taking her clothes, personal belongings, and some furniture that was clearly hers from before the wedding. She left behind all the photos of us together, gifts I had given her over the years, memories from over a decade ago. When I returned to the apartment on Sunday night, the place felt empty in a way that went beyond the physical. It was as if the soul of the space had been ripped out. The following months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, negotiations over property division, and emotional adjustments. Jennifer hired an aggressive attorney who tried to argue that the security cameras violated her privacy and that the recordings should not be admissible. But Thomas brilliantly countered that the cameras were installed in common areas of the marital apartment, with both parties' knowledge, for legitimate security purposes. The fact that they captured evidence of misconduct did not invalidate their legality. The judge agreed with us. The division of assets was less favorable for Jennifer than she probably expected when she began her secret planning. The apartment, which we were paying for together but where I had made a substantial down payment of $80,000 of my own money before the marriage, went to me after I bought her out at fair market value. Our savings were divided, but the judge ordered her to return the $15,000 she had secretly transferred, considering it bad faith. Our cars, each of us had bought our own, stayed with their respective owners. We had no children, which greatly simplified the process but also made it more lonely in some ways. There were no living pieces of us to maintain any kind of connection. During this time, I uncovered more painful details. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Jennifer and Derek had continued their relationship openly after our separation. They went on the romantic weekend they'd planned. They posted photos on social media, no longer hiding anything. Part of me wanted to be angry, jealous, something intense. But honestly, I only felt a deep sadness for the loss of what could have been and a growing relief to be out of that toxic situation. I also discovered that Sarah, the friend who encouraged and supported the cheating, was having her own problems. Her husband discovered the conversations through her texts and learned that she was actively encouraging Jennifer to cheat, keeping secrets from him, and even offering her own apartment as a meeting place on occasion. Their marriage also entered crisis mode. There's poetic justice in that, I suppose. The choices we make, the complicities we maintain, eventually have consequences. Over time, I began therapy. It was suggested by my brother David, who had gone through a difficult divorce years earlier. At first, I was reluctant, thinking I could process everything on my own. But after a few weeks of struggling with the loneliness, residual anger, and constant ruminations about what I'd done wrong, I accepted that I needed professional help. My therapist, Dr. Patricia Williams, was instrumental in my recovery. She helped me understand that while I may have been an imperfect, neglectful husband in some ways, that didn't justify or cause the betrayal. Jennifer's choices were hers, not mine. In our sessions, we explored my tendency to lose myself in work, using professional success as a substitute for emotional connection. I recognized that I had stopped putting effort into my marriage, assuming that stability was enough. Jennifer was right about one thing: I had become predictable, perhaps even boring. But the answer to marital dissatisfaction is communication, couples therapy, and honesty about unmet needs. It's not lying, cheating, or secret abandonment plans. Dr. Patricia also helped me work through the breach of trust that extended beyond Jennifer. I discovered I was suspicious of everyone, questioning motives, and looking for signs of dishonesty in every interaction. This was no way to live. Slowly, I learned to separate Jennifer's specific trauma from the future possibilities of trusting others again. It was and continues to be a work in progress. 6 months after the initial separation, the divorce was finalized. We met in court for the final hearing in November 2024. Jennifer looked different, thinner, with a tired appearance that expensive clothes couldn't hide. We exchanged brief glances. There was no longer any anger on my part, only a sad emptiness. The judge officially declared the marriage of Michael Thompson and Jennifer Thompson, née Jennifer Martinez, officially dissolved. 12 years reduced to a few stamps on legal documents. We left the courthouse through different doors, without saying goodbye, without saying anything. There was nothing more to say. In the months following the divorce, I focused on rebuilding my life. I continued working, but with a better balance. I established clearer boundaries between my professional and personal life. I completely redecorated the apartment, removing any trace of Jennifer or the life we had together. New furniture, new colors, a fresh start. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, picked up the guitar again, something I hadn't done since college. I traveled alone for the first time in my life, a 2-week journey through the American West, driving slowly, reflecting, healing. I also invested time in friendships I'd neglected during my marriage. Weekly dinners with my brother David and his family. Weekends with college friends I hadn't seen in years. I discovered a community of divorced men who met monthly for mutual support. It wasn't formal therapy, but it had therapeutic value. Hearing others' stories, realizing I wasn't alone in this experience, was unexpectedly comforting. As for the security cameras, the ones that revealed the truth that changed everything, I kept the system installed. But I modified the settings to record no audio in private areas, only video at entrances. The irony was not lost on me. I installed the cameras to protect my apartment from outside intruders, and they ended up protecting my life from an internal threat I didn't know existed. If not for that technology, I likely would have been caught completely off guard when Jennifer initiated the divorce on her own terms, potentially putting me at a significant legal and financial disadvantage. The discovery, while painful, allowed me to take control of the situation. About a year after the separation, in May 2025, I received news through mutual acquaintances that made me reflect deeply on everything. Jennifer and Derek had ended their relationship. Apparently, the intense passion that seemed so real and overwhelming during the affair phase didn't survive the reality of a real, open relationship, with all its complexities and daily responsibilities. Derek, I learned, began displaying exactly the same behaviors Jennifer criticized in me: excessive focus on work, inattention, complacency. The novelty had worn off, fantasy met reality, and couldn't resist. Jennifer tried to contact me a few weeks after the breakup. A long, regretful email, saying she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, that she finally understood what she'd lost, and that she'd like to talk about starting over. I read the email 3 times, feeling conflicting emotions. Part of me, the part that still remembered the good times, felt a pang of something. Maybe not love, but nostalgia, maybe pity. But the bigger part, the part that had grown and healed over the past year, knew the answer. I wrote a short, respectful response. I thanked her for sharing her feelings and said I hoped she found happiness and personal growth on her own path. But I made it clear that that chapter of my life was closed permanently. There was no resentment, but there was also no possibility of return. What was broken between us was irreparable, not because I couldn't forgive, but because I had completely lost the trust that is fundamental to any real relationship. Without trust, there is no foundation. And rebuilding trust after a betrayal of that magnitude was simply beyond my ability or desire. I didn't receive a reply to my email and never had direct contact with Jennifer again. Through friends, I learned that she changed jobs, then moved to another city, perhaps seeking a fresh start, far from memories and judgments. I sincerely hope she finds what she's looking for and learns from her mistakes, just as I have from mine. Today, almost 2 years after that fateful Tuesday in April 2024, when I opened the camera app and discovered the truth, I'm in a completely different place. I still live in the same apartment, but it's unrecognizable compared to what it was. Every room has been transformed, every memory replaced by new experiences. I still work at the same company, but now as a senior manager, a promotion I earned last year, partly because I had more energy to devote to work without the unacknowledged toxicity draining my personal life. Personally, I'm learning to open myself up to the possibility of relationships again. I've gone on a few dates, nothing serious yet, but I'm open to possibilities. With the continued help of therapy, I'm working on not carrying Jennifer's trauma into future relationships. Every person is unique, every relationship is its own story. It's unfair to judge someone new based on the actions of someone in the past. What did I learn from this devastating experience? Several harsh but valuable lessons. First, never assume a relationship is okay just because there are no obvious conflicts. Silence can be stagnation disguised as peace. Active, constant, honest communication is absolutely essential. Second, trust but verify isn't just for business. Maintaining some level of awareness about what's going on in your own relationship isn't paranoia, it's mutual responsibility. Third, when someone shows you who they truly are through their actions, believe them. Jennifer proved herself capable of elaborate lies, prolonged betrayal, and manipulative planning. No amount of shared history makes it wise to ignore these revelations. But perhaps the most important lesson was about myself. I acknowledged my own flaws and shortcomings without using them to justify cheating. I actively worked to become a better, more balanced, more present person. The version of me today is stronger, more aware, more complete than the man who stood on that construction site in April 2024, watching his world crumble through a cell phone screen. That terrifying moment was also a necessary awakening, a turning point that forced me to grow in ways I probably never would have in the comfort zone of a mediocre marriage. The security cameras I installed to protect my apartment ended up protecting something far more important, my ability to make informed choices about my own life. They revealed a painful truth that I deserved to know. And although the method of discovery was accidental and the truth was devastating, today I'm grateful I discovered it when I did, in the way I did. The alternative would have been to continue living a lie, eventually being surprised by divorce papers on unfavorable terms, without understanding what happened or why. If you're listening now, you might recognize elements of this story in your own life. Maybe you're going through something similar, or maybe you know someone who is. I want you to know that, as devastating as it is to discover betrayal or face the end of a relationship you thought was solid, there is life on the other side. There is growth, there is healing, there is the possibility of happiness again. The process is painful, I won't lie about that. There are bad days, moments of doubt, lonely nights where you question everything. But if you do the inner work, if you seek help when you need it, if you allow yourself to feel your emotions without drowning in them, you will emerge stronger. This channel exists to share stories like mine, to create a space where we can be honest about the complexities of human relationships, about failures, betrayals, disappointments, and also about resilience, recovery, and renewal. If my story resonated with you, if it made you feel less alone in your own struggles, then it was worth sharing. We are not alone in these experiences. We all carry our scars, our lessons, our stories of overcoming. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do so now. Click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future stories. Here you'll find a community of people who understand, who don't judge, who recognize that life is complicated and that we're all doing the best we can with the information and resources we have. Leave a comment below telling us how this story impacted you, share your own experiences if you feel comfortable, or simply leave a like to show you were here and that the message was received. And remember, if you're experiencing betrayal, emotional abuse, or any form of toxic relationship, you deserve better. You deserve truth, respect, and genuine partnership. Don't settle for less because you're afraid of being alone or because you've invested so much time that you feel you have to make it work. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to recognize when something isn't working and have the courage to choose a different path. There are resources available, there are professionals who can help, there are support communities. You don't have to go through this alone. For me, that day in April 2024 marked the end of one chapter but also the beginning of another. A chapter where I'm in control, where I make conscious choices, where I don't settle for less than I deserve. A chapter where I learned that sometimes the worst experiences lead us to the best versions of ourselves. The journey continues, the growth continues, and I'm genuinely optimistic about what the future holds. Because now I know that no matter what comes, I have the strength and inner resources to handle it. And so do you. Thank you for listening to my story until the end. Your presence here, your time, and your attention mean more than you can imagine. Until the next story, take care of yourself, value the people who truly value you, and always remember that you are stronger than you think. Subscribe, like, and comment, and together we will continue building this community of support, understanding, and mutual growth. See you soon.